Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Safe Defend Live. I am Dave Evans with the great Dr. Greg Vecchi, behavioral analyst, expert in all things active shooter. And Doc, I just want to thank you guys for giving me the Safe Defend Cup. I appreciate that. I'm sporting today for the show, so I'm going to have my coffee here. We're going to talk about the critical time gap and the incident Uvalde specifically. And I think this is one of the most challenging things that happens in any kind of active killer incident because it's complete chaos. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, it's more than just chaos, brother. That's an understatement. It is absolutely terrible. The damage that happens, the injuries, the fear, the trauma, and then afterwards, right? I mean, it's still fresh in people's minds. And then when you look at an after action review like this, it just reopens the wounds.
Yeah, that's a fact. The fog and friction of when an incident happens and your adrenaline starts pumping and you don't know what to do and you don't know what's next and you don't have any training. I can't even imagine being thrown into that environment, right? I mean, I trained my whole life as an operator, and when it happened, even with all the training we had, your blood pressure went up, but at least you knew what to do, right?
Yeah, I mean that's really the key there on the training is that we can't stop our physiological response. I mean that caveman brain, man, when you feel threatened, it takes over, and unless you got conditioned training and checklists and things like this to help you manage, because you just have to manage your body, you have to manage that body alarm response, and that's got to be factored in. And so that's part of the problem, I think. But as looking through the report, and I mean this is being covered everywhere. I've been on a number of news programs, talking about this, but I kind of want to kind of bring it down to what is valuable for Safe Defend and what we do at Safe Defend, right? And I'd spend a lot of time talking about left to bang, assessment and things like this. But here's the bottom line: you can't stop all of them, right? And when it happens, you've got to have a good protocol, a good system, and good training, for yourself. Because if we just kind of even just review a few of the facts of the case, right? I mean, the pertinent thing for this discussion, I think, is that when the shooter entered, right, he entered like 11:30 in the morning, something like this. Within 1 minute, he was in those two classrooms and he was killing people. And then within 3 minutes of the realization that this was going on, 11 police officers arrived, and they run to the classrooms. Okay, all good so far. It's at some point, or I'm not exactly sure what happened because they don't explain why. But out of those 11 officers, 5 of them made it to the classrooms. They advanced. They continued to advance. The other ones did not. It's unknown as to why. And they were fired upon or near, and there was some shrapnel that hit a few of them, and then they retreated. And nothing really happened until 77 minutes later, hours later, and things like this. I mean, they were going back and forth and everything like this. And that's really where the problem is, right? And so that aside, that whole failure aside, you have to remember that at Safe Defend and in my own consulting and in my own training, I don't train police on this. That's not my focus. I mean, I certainly have, and I understand what they do, but my focus is on the kindergarten teacher. My focus is on the worker, the worker in the manufacturing plant that's just coming to work, the white collar guy, the accountant, the lawyer, people in universities, students coming to class, people that are not police, people that are not responders, people that are not essentially trained in this, right? And so that's first and foremost the focus. So when you start talking about things like what Safe Defend can offer, you got to look at it that we're very focused on those people, and specifically what we call the critical time gap, and that's when the attack starts and when it ends, and that time in between. And so we also know that in about 80% of the cases, even when everything is done correctly, um, you're on your own. the police are not going to get there in time. Now, in some cases like Uvalde, it is partially the police's fault, right? And the facts are there to support that for that case. But I do want to say that most of the police responses are done correctly. They're done with good motivation, good training, and still they don't make it. And so that's what I want to try to cover here, is to just use the Uvalde problem, right? But not really, as a, continuing to, analyze what they did or didn't do and things like this, but really to just use that to highlight what needs to be done and what people need to focus on if they find themselves in these situations. What do you think about that?
Well, here's what I think. I think that the critical time gap is a real challenge. I think even though they got there in 3 minutes, there was some information lacking when the Uvalde police got there that they did not have, that was not their fault. And the key is, how do we get notification immediately to first responders as soon as it happens, not a phone call, as you push a button and they know exactly where in the building you are, which they didn't know in Uvalde. So an alert that says this is where it's happening. It has started. The police can do their thing. Now the teachers have the equipment to secure the classroom and protect their staff and their students. The reality of it is when the stuff hits the fan, you're on your own with your team until you aren't. And that may be 2 minutes and that may be an hour. And it's no different. It's no different in a school than it is in combat. If you're on patrol or you're overhead and the shit hits the fan, I don't know how many times you were flying and had an asset being attacked by the enemy, and they said, we need danger close, we need munitions now, and we're 2 minutes out. I mean, we can't get there any faster. And you're talking about 20 miles, and with the jet getting there, it's 2 minutes to get them the help they need. So, we've got to teach our students and staff, give them the tools they need to get into a safe place and hunker down until they can't. Right. And I think that's a key point of SafeDefend and critical time gap. We address both of those issues.
Yeah, because if you look at what the recommendations were, so there were a number of recommendations coming out. And, one of the things one major thing, and one of the major mistakes that happened there was the fact that they treated it as a barricaded situation.
Yep.
And we learned, years ago in Columbine in 1999, that when you barricade, what you're doing is you're containing it, and you're waiting, and you're trying to negotiate, or you're trying to find your way in, the best way to protect people. But in this case, it's all over with. And so you can't create this as a barricaded situation. And so part of the problem here was, obviously training problems. I know they had this training not too long before this happened. So there's definitely some sort of a training problem. The other thing that came out of this is, the just following the precept of the principles here. You first try to stop the killing, then you stop the dying, right? And what that means is that this can't be a barricaded, contained situation. You have to go in and you have to go directly towards the threat and stop it. And there's a lot of criticism on this, as it should be, as to why this didn't happen. One of the things, in addition to just the individual training of the officers, knowing and following that protocol, is the lack of leadership, the lack of preparation, the multiple radios, the lack of redundancy in communication and everything. But what was kind of really frustrating for me was the direction from the on-scene commander there, right? That basically pulled them back from going in and stopping the shooter, which is a violation of protocol, and focusing on evacuating other people who were in other rooms and things like this, looking for keys. He forgot his radio, so his cell phone wasn't effective in communication. They also had a system. The school had a system that didn't work either. It had trouble connecting. People didn't get the notification, mostly because it was wireless. It wasn't hardwired and things like this, and that added to the problems, right? So all of this kind of came together as a perfect storm, which basically left everybody on their own. And so, it goes back to the fact that, you have to control the things you can control. I can't control, as a person going to school, as a person going to work, I can't control the training of the police department. I can't control, what they're going to do, what they're not going to do. I can't control when they're going to arrive, when it's going to stop, and things like this. But I do have control in knowing and owning the ground around me, and having good training in terms of escape, evade, and engage if necessary. And being able, the bottom line is just, it's to survive and eventually thrive. I mean, not just, survive, but really have the confidence to be able to deal with these situations until it's over with. And that's that critical time gap. The other thing that people don't realize, that critical time gap, there's three things to it. It's not just the police response. Police were there in 3 minutes. Now, even if let's say they did what they were supposed to, they went right in and killed the offender. There were already people that had died and been shot by that time, right? And so you have to take in consideration before the police arrive and after the police arrive as part of that time, right? And so the police aren't going to arrive, or aren't going to even launch until they know something's wrong. They have to know what it is. They have to know the priority of the call. They have to know where it's located at. You have to get to the right police department, right? Because there's multiple police departments. Now, every police department is going to respond, but the police department that has that jurisdiction is going to know the ground better. It's going to know that area better than someone who doesn't. And so all that factors into this, delay. And so statistically, I did a research, kind of a review of existing research on that last year. And the average notification time before police even start rolling out is 10 minutes. One of the fastest response times that police can have is about 3 minutes, which we did have here. Okay, this is one good thing that happened. And then once you get to the location, you got to find the shooter. You got to find the bad guy. And that's a big question mark. We don't know how long that takes. And since we know that these events happen and are over with in 5 minutes or less, and that we know that most of the damage is inflicted within the first 2 minutes, especially if you have a semi-automatic handgun or rifle or things like this, where you have a high rate of fire, you have to take that into consideration. So the question is that there's two things, and this is kind of where the technology comes in. This is where the SafeDefend system is super valuable, as opposed to not having it. I always describe the SafeDefend system as kind of the, fire alarm system for an active shooter, active killer event, right? Only better, right? It's hardwired like a fire alarm system. So that way you don't have to worry about Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and cellular and all that's going to go off, because you got to realize that, when you have an event like this, everyone's on the phone, everyone's on the radio, everybody's going crazy because everybody's trying to help. And then what that does is that messes up, that creates a problem in the communication. Hardwired, just like a fire alarm, goes directly to 911. The other nice thing is that it takes the burden off the person. You'd kind of hit on this earlier in our discussion about how awful and traumatic these things are.
Yep.
I mean, you're literally running for your life. And who's going to have time or the presence of mind to take their phone out, remember their code, find the right phone number? Most people, they'll start texting or they'll call their parents. And we've seen this happen, right? And although this is completely understandable, it's not effective as far as the notification time. So one of the things that I love about the SafeDefend system, and one of the reasons I came to this company as opposed to other companies I was looking at, was the fact that this works. It's when you are in that state, when you're not body alarm response. And all you have to do in SafeDefend literally is put your finger on a reader. Once you put that finger on the reader, the whole burden of the notification is now off of your shoulders, and you can now focus on being safe. And so what happens? Well, all the right things happen when you use SafeDefend. Number one, you put your finger on the reader. Okay. Notification within seconds goes to 911. And here's what they get. And here's what's really valuable. Number one, who set it off, where in the building that the alarm went off, which gives an indication of where the emergency, where the concern is, the room number, the floor number, the building number, the address, the name of the school, as well as, and I love this part, is the nearest outside door to the location where the alarm went off, which what happens is 911 gets all that information and sends it to the police. And so the police immediately know where to go and where to start once they get there, because you got to realize that in a lot of school districts there are many, many buildings, they're campuses, right? And you've got, see, 3 high schools, 4 high schools, you got this. If you don't have a start location, it's going to take time and probably a lot of confusion to figure out where the attacker is or actually what's going on in real time. And the police are going for the attacker. They're not looking at maps. They don't have time for that. They don't have the time to look at their phone and all the other stuff. They want to know where to go. The other nice thing about this is that exact same information is sent to everyone in the school. In fact, the district or the human resources, if it's a business, or the university, chooses who they want that information to go to. So it's always going to be obviously the staff, the teachers, it might be the janitor, it might be another local cop that lives across the street from the school. You might add him. And the nice thing is that you have to be programmed in, which means that the active shooter isn't going to use a tactic like pulling the fire alarm to get everybody to come into the hallway so he can shoot them. He wouldn't be able to set it off because the system is registered per fingerprint per person, so you can control who sets it off and who doesn't. That's just the first piece of the notification that we bring to the table. That is just awesome, right? Then the next piece is the police response. We don't have any control over that, right? The next piece is find the bad guy, find the shooter, and stop him. We have no control over that. But what we do have control over is the next piece that SafeDefend provides, which is the protection piece. So although we don't have control over what the police are doing or when it's going to stop, we do have control and confidence over having safety tools, life-saving tools, as well as medical tools and training to keep ourselves alive and to protect us if necessary. And so the second piece of the SafeDefend system, besides the notification, is the protection. What we mean by protection is it's typically we call it a safety cabinet. And this safety cabinet can be placed in a classroom. It can be placed in a break room. It can be placed in an office, wherever you want. Now, here's a nice thing about this. When you notify, again, that notification I just discussed, it goes, right? So it burdens off of you now. Now I can say, okay, notification, cabinet pops open. Now I can go to my safety, right? So while the police are responding and why they are trying to find the bad guy, which I have no control over, I have control over what I do with my go bag, which has things like a strobe flashlight for blinding the offender if he gets into the classroom, a baton to protect themselves, also maybe to break windows and use a window as an exit, using a baton for that. It's got a window break on it. Gel pepper spray, it's got a 21-foot range on it. Gel, it's not spray, so it can't blow back on you. Things like this, as well as whistle and flex cuffs and things like this. So you got the confidence to know that you can protect yourself, and you can also use it in escaping and other things. And then lastly, we provide 3 major pieces of medical trauma gear. One is pressure bandages, because pressure stops bleeding, right, on extremities, your arms and your legs. We offer also the C-locks, and the C-locks is kind of like Quick Lock. It's a hemostatic gauze, and you stuff that into the wound, right, to stop the bleeding. And the beautiful thing about C-locks, because we thought this through, is it works even if you are an older person or someone who's on blood thinners. It still clots the blood. And then lastly, the tourniquet and where to apply it, how to use it, and things like this. And so for all of our customers, you get our system, they get the training. All of our customers, they get the system, get our tools and our medical gear. And if you don't want our system, we'll come and train you anyway, and on how to do this and use improvised weapons and what you have available until you realize you need us, and then we'll be there for you.
All right, Doc, in summary, and this is what I love about SafeDefend. We capture the first challenge in any incident, clear, concise communication, right? We got to get the message to the right people in the fastest, most simple way we can. SafeDefend system does that, right? Second thing, teachers and students and staff. The cabinet allows for them to have a place to hunker down in their room with equipment to defend the threshold and take care of anybody that's injured. The third thing, you get the training with the system from experts who have been through this, who train on a daily basis to make sure your team's prepared, even if you don't have the system. So you can start with just a training piece, get your staff trained and prepared for an incident, and then step into it as it makes sense for your organization. SafeDefend absolutely reduces a critical time gap from the incident to the response and to the completion of the incident. And that's the last thing I want to say about the system. But for the folks in Uvalde, we're with you. We still are heartbroken and heartfelt sympathies for you, for what you went through. And we know you're getting better. And for all the other districts out there, keep working hard, keep preparing your teachers and students so this doesn't happen. I think one of the biggest things we can learn from these incidents is soft targets are easier to attack than targets that are training to this all the time, because the offender knows that you're training, especially since 90% of the offenders are from within.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
100%.
All right, Doc, it's been a great Friday. I hope that you have a fabulous weekend. And with that, Doc and Dave, we are out of here.
Have a great weekend.
Well, all right.